don't know where to begin with this Peter Mandelson story. I mean, it is quite extraordinary. I mean, I was talking to Claire Purcell earlier, who's worked in government, who's been a government advisor. I find it astonishing, basically, that a government minister, the business secretary no less, can send confidential financial information and sort of, unannounced announcements which haven't been made yet to a man outside of the government in another country, in a foreign country, who happens to be a financial investor who potentially could make bucket loads of money from it. And how could it happen without the security services knowing about it?
Yes, I mean, all very good questions, Mike. I mean, it's completely shocking. And although, if you like, I can see why, for political reasons, I might be laughing a bit about what's happening to the Labour Party. You were right earlier when you said this is a national disgrace, really. I'm not aware of exactly how Peter Mandelson squirreled this information to Jeffrey Epstein, but it is the sharing of highly sensitive information, which is enormously valuable. I mean, it's why we've got to take any form of government leak, deliberate or otherwise, and this certainly looks deliberate, incredibly seriously. Because if you know what the government is about to announce, you can bet big bucks one way or another on the open markets to reflect that highly sensitive information. So on the face of it, it's illegal, it's corrupt, it's immoral in all sorts of ways. And I appreciate Peter Mandelson has handed in his Labour Party membership card, as he doesn't want to cause the Labour Party or the government any more embarrassment. But it's a bit late for that, isn't it? So we know the police are investigating it. It's difficult to speculate on what crimes might have been committed. But it is absolutely staggering that a cabinet minister would share information to an individual like that. It's not, it was no part of government policy. It wasn't like having a discussion with, I don't know, the US Department of Commerce about what your various business plans might be. It looks absolutely dreadful. And of course, going all the way back to how on earth was this man appointed ambassador to the US in the first place when there were red flags all over him? And nevertheless, the Prime Minister decided he was the best appointment. I mean, nobody comes out of this looking at all good. I dare say very dramatic further action is likely to be taken. And it is a total humiliation for the United Kingdom.
Well, that's what I feel like. I feel like we're sort of somehow tainted now by this ridiculous sort of pantomime government that we've got, who can't seem to get from one day to the next without a massive scandal in one way, shape or form. I mean, literally Starmer leaves the country for about 3 days and comes back and it's all blown up in his face again. And I mean, I would say not only do the police need to investigate what Mandelson may have done that we know of, but maybe they need to investigate that whole period of time, because I mentioned this earlier in the show. Famously, Gordon Brown sold off all of our gold, right, for a sort of knockdown price, which some people said at the time was necessary, but looking back on it now, looks like a pretty stupid move. Who knows whether that was something that Jeffrey Epstein was made aware of by Peter Mandelson? Who knows whether it was even something that Jeffrey Epstein suggested? We need to know exactly what all the correspondence was between Peter Mandelson and Epstein, and possibly other people as well that he was talking to.
Yeah, Mike, that's exactly right. Because look, we've had all of these files released, haven't we? I mean, and there's a huge amount of data to look through. I think somebody was saying the other day that the last batch of files released, if you stacked it up as pieces of paper, would be twice the height of the Eiffel Tower. So there's a huge amount to look through here. But obviously what the release of this documentation can't tell you is what might have been shared in conversation, for example, right? There may be no audit trail. It might not be that you forwarded an email, but you sit down with somebody and you just tell them something over the dinner table or over a drink or something. Well, that wouldn't come out in the files if it was just passed on in that fashion. We're only looking at photographs and email correspondence here. So there's only one way around it, isn't it? These people are going to have to testify under oath, either in the UK, if a potential crime has been committed here, or in the USA, or both. Because although the release of the evidence we've seen is truly shocking, I don't think there's any reason to believe that we've got to the bottom of it. There could be an awful lot more potential wrongdoing that hasn't yet come to our attention. It's unlikely that if you're involved in passing on information in this fashion, that there's only 1 or 2 times in which you've done it. There could be huge amounts more. So I think there needs to be a lot more digging getting genuinely to the bottom of it, people will have to give evidence under oath, and if they give false testimony at that time, that's perjury on top of anything else that might be considered. That's the only way to really get to the bottom of this. It's truly shocking and disturbing. And what's quite odd here is it seems as if, you can't be sure here, but it seems as if neither Peter Mandelson nor the Prime Minister nor anybody in the Labour government sort of saw this coming. You would have thought they would have tried to get out ahead of the curve if they realised it was going to be anything like this bad. But no, we're just passively sitting here waiting for the next scandal to drop and just dealing with it one crisis at a time. No way to run a government.
No, absolutely not. And I mean, it looks like Gordon Brown, some weeks ago, asked questions about Mandelson's involvement with Epstein and asked questions about possible leaking of information. The government looked into it and found nothing, which leaves you feeling slightly perturbed as well, doesn't it?
Yes. I mean, look, I was just thinking this through, how might information be passed on by a government minister? Obviously, anything sent from a government server or a government email address, you should easily be able to track that down. I mean, it requires a certain degree of forensic investigation, but it's not particularly complex. The problem you've got is if somebody in government, squirrels away the information, takes it away on a data stick for sake of argument, or simply memorises it, goes home or goes to a different computer, uses a non-governmental email address to pass it on, it's an awful lot harder to track down. So there are ways round the system. It can never be completely foolproof. But your point about Gordon Brown asking questions about this is the investigation should be more than just looking at a computer and seeing what emails were forwarded. Peter Mandelson should have been asked about it, not just, the various PCs look through that he might have had contact with. So it seems that there has not been a sufficient investigation into this, and there will have to be one now. And despite this huge data dump, I think there are still more questions than answers, despite whatever it is, 3 million pages of documentation now being put in the public domain. There's huge questions to be asked, and I guess that starts with the police deciding to what extent criminal activity has been engaged in, if at all. That's going to be the starting point. But yeah, this has got a long way to run, because I suspect that there are huge areas of activity that we've not investigated that might be dubious, and we now need to get to the bottom of. This is going to take a long time. It's going to need to take a long time if we want every single answer, and I, for one, do. And
Claire Pearsall kind of hinted at it, and you may have a similar view, that the reason that Mandelson has been able to have such a kind of charmed life, and the reason he's been able to have so many comebacks, is because of what he knows about the history of Labour governments, not just this one, but previous ones under Gordon Brown and Tony Blair as well, that he knows, as they say, where all the bodies are buried, that effectively he should never have passed a vetting procedure to become ambassador to the United States of America. And if he did pass one, then how useless is that vetting procedure, and how useless are our security services?
Yeah, but I think we know about that, Mike, that when the vetting took place, which is obviously a highly sensitive and extremely senior appointment, there were all sorts of red flags raised in the vetting process. That comes down then to a political decision by the Prime Minister. He can look at those red flags and ignore them, or he can decide that even the mildest misdemeanor is too great a concern to allow an appointment to go forward. The decision made by our Prime Minister was, despite the vetting, not giving the all clear. Far from it. We don't know exactly what was said in that vetting process, but we do know substantial concerns were raised. The Prime Minister decided to put aside those concerns, essentially ignore them, out-trump them, and make the appointment anyway. Now, I think sometimes, if you look at somebody's past record, you might look at a misdemeanor or two and say, well, actually, we can forgive him for that. We still think he's up for the job. But if things go wrong, you will have much egg on your face. And things here have gone spectacularly wrong, proving that Keir Starmer's judgment in allowing this appointment to go forward was a disastrous one. And he should have been conscious, if he allowed this to go forward without a clean bill of health being presented to him, that there was a huge political risk he was taking, that it's on him that appointment occurred. And he certainly, at the very least, needs to explain why he ignored the warnings he was given, and fully apologise for that. And I want to know for sure how we're going to make our appointment of people to the position of embassies across the world, or indeed any other important public appointments, more robust in future. Haven't really heard much about that from the Prime Minister yet, have we?
We haven't, indeed. And he obviously looks very uncomfortable in Parliament, as he did yesterday, answering any questions about it. You know, he gets very grumpy when anybody sort of questions his abilities. You know, he said at the weekend that, you know, he was going to be around for a long time. I wonder if this is the final straw, which actually does end his political sort of stewardship of the country. Because I don't see how he survives it, because not only is he right in the eye of the storm, is his judgment being questioned, but it looks as though even when he knew about these further emails, not the ones we found out about yesterday, but when they actually removed Mandelson as ambassador, even then they kind of didn't see what was coming down the track. You know, even as late as yesterday morning, they were kind of saying, well, the story's dead now because Mandelson's quit the Labour Party, as if that was the end of it. Well, it's very much not the end of it. And not only that, Starmer called for Andrew Mountbatten Windsor to go to America to testify before Congress. Surely he's got to use that same criteria for Mandelson. He's got to tell him to go and speak to Congress as well.
Yeah, no doubt about that at all, I would have thought, Mike. I mean, obviously, a good number of the revelations crushingly embarrassing for the man previously known as Prince Andrew. But not so obvious that there is any specific criminal wrongdoing yet. I mean, maybe there is, maybe there isn't. It's not absolutely evident on the face of it. On the Peter Mandelson area, I mean, passing on sensitive government information to Jeffrey Epstein is clearly unambiguously serious wrongdoing. So, yeah, you would have thought that what the Prime Minister said about Andrew has to apply to Mandelson as well, wouldn't you? There seems no doubt about it. And in terms of the impact on the Prime Minister, Mike, you know, maybe you're right. I mean, there do seem to be an awful lot of possible last straws that might break the camel's back here. But this really is a spectacular political misjudgment. I mean, you can perhaps forgive him for sort of photo opportunities that go wrong. I thought the China trip was rather embarrassing and humiliating. But you can put all of that down to being sort of bad optics, bad PR. When you're looking at something which is straightforward, disastrous judgment, I think Labour MPs and others will be saying, you know, can we have somebody whose judgment is so poor continuing as our Prime Minister, especially given that if you look at the state of the country, if you look at the government's approval ratings in the opinion polls, there already seem to be a very good number of reasons why those in his own party might want to oust him. So perhaps it's the final straw. Perhaps it's the penultimate straw, but I think it makes Keir Starmer's survival even harder than it would have been a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, absolutely right. Let's have a quick look actually at something that happened yesterday, if we can, Pooch. Danny Kruger got up in the House of Commons and asked a question to Keir Starmer, a very grumpy Keir Starmer, about China. Check this out.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Prime Minister is very full of the abstract virtue of engaging with China and getting in the room with them. He used to say that Britain shouldn't even sign a trade deal with China because of the persecution of the Uyghur people. So having now got in the room with the Chinese leader, can he tell the House a single thing that he achieved on behalf of the Uyghurs, or indeed on behalf of the security of this country?
Prime Minister.
Yes, engaging is really important for the security of this country. And just for clarity, we didn't sign a trade deal on the visit. We simply looked at the ways in which we can open the opportunities for businesses. There were 60 big businesses with us on the visit, and they're absolutely clear about the advantages to them. And I'd much rather take their view on the advantages than the nonsense that's being spouted on the other side of this House.
Ooh. Isn't he a little bit sour and bitter about all of that? And he's lying again, by the way, because Mark Littlejohn's with us. Mark Littlewood. I'm looking at Richard Littlejohn's article, that's fine. Mark, he's very grumpy, he's very touchy, very tetchy, and there were not 60 business leaders with him, because an awful lot of the people that went with that group were in fact cultural leaders, as they were said to be. Many of them running museums. I think the head of the Natural History Museum went, the head of the Scotland Museum went, the head of the, museum in the West Midlands went, the mayor of the West Midlands went. You know, these were not business people.
Yeah, that's right, Mike. But I mean, even if they were, Danny Kruger's question stands, isn't it? I mean, I can't see what this visit achieved for the UK. You just get this word salad of, well, we've engaged. We engage with China. It's important to be around the room. We had a very productive meeting. It's important to keep channels of communication open, etc., etc. Word salad after word salad after word salad. What tangible did we achieve? Either economically, and virtually nothing there. There's some chat that it might be a little bit easier to get a visa if you want to go to China for 30 days. But I mean, this is so minimal as to certainly not be worth a prime ministerial visit. You would have thought a couple of junior bureaucrats could sort that out. And as Danny Kruger was saying, well, what progress has there been made on, say, human rights? Danny Kruger there pointed out the issue about the treatment of the Uyghurs, but what about, say, the imprisonment of Jimmy Lai, a British citizen? Was that raised? Why wasn't he on the plane home with Keir Starmer? Nothing seems to have been achieved at all in tangible terms. What a waste of a visit. So whether it was heads of museums or regional mayors or actual businessmen that were going with him, you sort of suspect all 60 of them have a wasted trip, really. And that when the Prime Minister's asked, well, what did you tangibly bring back? He bristles and just goes into waffling on about engagement and channels of communication. It's pathetic. It was a wasted trip, really. And you suspect from the outset he didn't really firmly have anything on the table, either about human rights or about the future of Taiwan, or indeed any big economic gains. It was all window dressing, and I'm afraid you get the sense, don't you, that the Prime Minister just prefers spending time outside of the UK. Perhaps it's displacement activity that he can't really get his head around or tackle Britain's problems. So some photo ops in Beijing is more to his liking, but that's all it amounted to, some embarrassing photo ops and no tangible gains on human rights or on our future economic relationship that are worth really even mentioning. Pretty pathetic all round.
And a lovely gift card to open a massive embassy, which is going to be the subject, no doubt, of a great deal of espionage offered, which might be dangerous and certainly detrimental to the common good of this country.
Yeah, no, that's right. I mean, it looks appalling, doesn't it? All sorts of concerns about this super embassy, as they're calling it. In a very sensitive part of London with regard to, communications and all the rest of it. Therefore, on the face of it, an extremely easy place for the Chinese to spy on us from. Why we're making that easier for them is anyone's guess. You could speculate, couldn't you, that he wanted you just to give something to China in order to facilitate this visit. But a stronger Prime Minister wouldn't just be giving things away to a country with whom we need to have the best relations we can, but are hardly a natural ally. You'd be having a list of demands. And China seems to have got their super embassy for nothing. I mean, they must be laughing out of both sides of their mouth. And they probably don't really care what Keir Starmer says. So there's every reason that you would think he should be harder and firmer about the human rights record in China or the future of Taiwan and all of the rest of it. But no, it hasn't said anything of firmness at all. He rolls over entirely. And I think this super embassy thing is a major, major problem. Once it's gone ahead, it's going to be extremely difficult to close down because embassies are, effectively treated as the sovereign turf of the country who's running them. So what a weak government here. This is not what our relationship with China should look like. Unlike others, I'm not totally against the Prime Minister going to Beijing. I don't think we should boycott talking to the Chinese. I can see there can be some merit in it. But there's only merit in it if you have a list of things that you're trying to achieve, a list of demands that you want the Chinese to accede to, and you come back having achieved at least some of them. Going to China just to wander around, have a few slightly awkward photo ops, and then waffle in the House of Commons a few days later about engagement and channels of communication is just an embarrassment, another national embarrassment, Mike.
Yeah, I'm afraid so. Sad to say, we've come to the end of our conversation. Mark Littlewood, thank you very much indeed.